Morning, I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging we're in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'll introduce the members of the panel. To my far left is Mr. Mark Boreski. To my immediate left is Ms. Carrie Linkletter. My name is Stu McPherson. I'll be chairing the hearing today. Representing the City of Winnipeg Assessment Taxation Department is Ms. Brittany Santucci, and the recording secretary today is Ms. Cara Belsha. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council. It's independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they so wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave and the process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. Just as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Let me swear the parties in, please. Just housekeeping, if you do have a cell phone, please put that on silent.
Please state your name.
Brittany Santucci.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, thank you.
Please state your name.
Frank?
Do you affirm the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Reimer.
Good morning.
You're here representing the tenants for 11 properties today,
Indeed.
and it's the annual rental value that we're dealing with only?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll just deal with these properties as they're listed on the docket today. So, Mrs. Assessor, when you're ready, we'll hear the first one, which is 234 Donald, but BA roll number 20491.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5345, address 234 Donald Street, business assessment ID 20499. So this business assessment here is for a total premise area of 282,462 square feet. It is from multiple floors. When I reviewed it in our system compared to the income and expense questionnaire, we have the whole fifth floor, or majority of the fifth floor, parts of the sixth floor, the whole seventh, the whole eighth, the whole ninth. There was a bit of an issue with determining what we actually have for the remainder of the 9,827 square feet for the second floor. When I reviewed the mailer, it includes units 91, 94, 99, which I have on my first page here. So there's about 2,500 square foot difference, which I then reviewed the entire mailer to kind of determine what space MPI has in this building. And it seems we have only 4 business assessment IDs for all of the units, which is quite a few. So there seems to be some space that's been allocated to this premise, which is supposed to be on another premise on the second floor. So when I did review it, I just want to state the total income and expense square footage for MPI is around 300,000 square feet, greater than 2,000 square feet, and the city has around the same. It's just, it's been allocated a bit weird with the business assessment ID, so I'm gonna review that when I go back to the office and kind of let the other assessors know who have the other ones under appeal. So for this one here today, we are about, it's about 2,500 square feet that should be with another PID, but it's on this one, so that's just the discrepancy with area. I just want to point out. Just a bit confusing with the second floor.
I'm sorry, so to clarify that, the 2,500 that is here,
It should be with another,
but is the other one the same
it's
owner?
lower.
Is it the same tenant?
It's the same tenant, it's all MPI, it's just because MPI occupies so much space in this building. So when we get letters from MPI, we just pretty much look at does it match the total leasable? So it does match, it's just a bit more is allocated to this business ID, and then there's a bit less on another one that I'm just gonna talk to another assessor
And is
about.
the other one under appeal as well?
Yes, but it's just not here today. So if you do lower this one, I'll just let them know that the other one needs to be increased based on what I reviewed for the mailer. Because I know the agent has a different square footage. So that's just kind of what I wanted to point out here, that there is a discrepancy, but overall, it's equal. It's just unfortunate that we have 4 business IDs. And
I'm just wondering whether these should not be dealt with at the same time.
Or would Brittany like to make a recommendation based on a recalculation of this area?
Then that would have to increase the other.
Did you want me to do that? Then I can provide you with that number today. Because I will go into the system and adjust them and put unit numbers attached to the business ID, because this one isn't, like, it doesn't have any with the address. It would be a bit easier for next time.
I think we're going to take a short recess here.
Mr. Chairman, just
discuss it.
for the board's reference, we haven't got to my materials yet, but the 98% of the difference relates to area, so just for the board's reference, that's gonna be the crux of the discussion from my perspective as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Call the meeting back to order. We have discussed it, and we think the proper decision is to postpone this particular item and move it on with the other one. And however the assessment department and the applicant determine how it best be served, you can figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So we'll move on, we'll still stay with 234 Donald, but it's the next item on the docket. It'd be file number 195668. So when you're ready, Ms. Assessor, can you read me, please?
Okay. This is file number 19-5668, address 234 Donald Street, business assessment ID 19267. This is the parking for City Place. We have 497 stalls at a rate of $138 to come up with an annual rental value of $823,032. And if you turn to my page 2, I just have comparable properties, 2017 reported rental rates for parking structures. So our stabilized ranges from $84.70 all the way up to $170.11, or $175.37. And then on page 3, I just included some of the actual gross parking rates as of April 1st, 2018. So quite the range for some of these depending on where they're heating and their location. So my recommendation today would be to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $823,020. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, questions for the assessor?
Just a couple, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ms. Santucci, so the first page of your materials, then, this is information that was pulled from the realty assessment records as to the number of stalls and the stall rate, and it's the same assessment that was used in connection with the 2020 realty assessment, correct?
Yes.
and which was in turn modeled urban, correct?
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Brusky.
On your second page of material, there's a mix of properties that obviously rent out monthly and some that do not rent out monthly.
Yes.
How do I make use of the information where it is not rented out monthly?
So in, like, with index number 1, where, or wait, are you just looking at
Well,
2994, where it's not monthly?
yeah,
I
just
guess we
pick
could-
any not monthly one.
Oh, okay, so those ones there, if we don't wanna focus on those ones, we just include the whole chart. We could look more at the monthly ones that would be closer, to the subject property, such as, I think the closer ones would be index number 10, index number 11, those would be in the downtown, not the exchange. I think index number 13, and 15 and 16, those would be probably closest to the subject in the downtown area, not the exchange or the hospital.
Okay.
So maybe.
And are these not on the first page of information?
For which, the first page, these are just, so they would fall within the range of the subject from the first page.
But the ones that you just made note of,
Yes.
10, 11, 13, 16, on page 2, are those not on page 1?
I don't think we have 2-3 Donald as a, 234 Donald's as comparable. So we would just look that it would fall within the range of some of these, and
So you're saying.
the subject property, the 138 would fall within the ranges for the stabilized. So for this one, we're using 138. I think for Hargrave, we have 121. Let's see some of the other ones I stated. Circle these. We have some lower ones at 98 for the one on Hargrave. 132 at 393 Portage. I don't think we have anything high. Most of the higher ones would be in the exchange. James McDermott. 2994 would have the, but that doesn't have monthly. So the 138 would be on the higher range of the downtown comps I have, and then it would fall within the range of total comps.
Okay. That's the defining thing really, is this page is downtown, this is downtown plus.
So I think what our assessor did, who compiled this, just put all of the parking structure rates and didn't separate them by area, just because we don't, I guess, have it seems like we have a large amount for the gross parking, but in regards to the actual ones from the mailers we're using on page 2, there's just a small group of them.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Ludwig.
Yeah, just wondering, this is 234 Donald is an MPI occupied building, so there is no casual parking in this parking lot at all? Or are you aware?
From my understanding that this parking lot offers monthly and casual.
Okay. So it is open to the public, or a portion of it is?
Yes. I would think that so much would be rented out to the tenants, and then like for any jet skis, you can park there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Your page 2, I'm just looking at your stabilized net operating income per stall per month. How is that calculated?
So we look at the net operating income, and we divide it by the number of stalls, the number of months. So the gross rates are the expenses is already applied to come up with this number. So we just look mostly at the net operating income that was determined, and then break it down back to the numbers per month. Sorry.
Okay, so you can't derive that number by taking the monthly rent and applying the expense ratio.
It would depend if the mailer has, for like the casual ones, it would be a bit harder probably to do it, because they would just give us a number. But we do have the expense ratios just to show what would have been applied to the gross rents as well.
Okay, and so this is actual reported income, so
Yes.
it's net of vacancy?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, hear from you, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, this is the City Place Parkade, so as Ms. Linkletter had raised the question, it's absolutely open to the public. Part of it will be leased to the employees of MPI, and part of it will be open to the public for their use when they come and visit the mall. So our request, as you know, on page 2 of our submission, our request is to reduce the 2020 ARV from $823,020 to $647,280. This request, if you turn briefly to page 4, and I am going to make the board aware of the circumstances in each case where the realty assessment has been decided. This is, as I mentioned, the City Place Parkade, and this this assessment of City Place was in appeal. If you skip down on our page 4 to the market rent section, we've attached the materials, and we'll go through those shortly. We've attached the materials relating to the realty assessment submission, requesting the $647,280 as the rental value to be capitalized in the valuation of the realty assessment, that component of the realty assessment. The board has accepted that for the realty assessment appeal. The assessor, I note though, and I'm going to be very clear on this in each case, the assessor has appealed that decision to the municipal board. So this is the market rent to be applied in connection with the parkade will presumably be part of the discussion at the municipal board in due course concerning the 2020 realty assessment. We do, however, very much retain the view that the annual rental value of $647,280 is fair and equitable, and we are making that request this morning. So if we turn briefly to our page 20 now, and this comes down to, recall that the only question I really had related to the number of stalls and the income, and Ms. Santucci confirmed this was model-driven revenue, and this was a number of stalls that was taken from the realty records. We have reviewed, and of course this was a property we represented, the total number of stalls that we have been made aware of by the owner is actually 465. So as a starting point, the assessment department appears to have 32 more stalls than the owner is actually reporting. The 465 stalls is made up, as you see there, of the 298 stalls, which I believe are the outdoor stalls, and 167 stalls, which are the indoor stalls. The total revenue in 2017 for the parking revenue for all sources, as you can see on our page 20, is $1,269,285 rounded. The total expenses was 600, or roughly $620,000, resulting at the bottom of that chart in a net 2017 parking income of $645,507. Now, in our request, we had actually, I guess it was due to a bit of rounding, we had used the figure of $647,280, so about $2,000 higher than that, and that's the number I'm requesting this morning. So our valuation for the purposes of calculating this annual rental value relates to the site-specific information for 2017 for all parking revenue sources, for all the parking stalls for the property, which we believe is a very fair representation. I did, however, want to make this request in the context of the 2020 realty assessment being an appeal at the municipal board as a result of the assessor's application. Notwithstanding that application, I'm asking for the annual rental value to be reduced to $647,280. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, questions for the applicant?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bresky?
Your page 20, 21 makes
Yes.
reference to 333 St. Mary Avenue,
Yes, indeed.
which, how's that related to
So it's
234 Donald?
234 Donald is what the business assessment roles are classified under in some cases, not in all, for the office component. So there's basically an office building and a retail component. The retail component for business assessment is typically still assessed under 333 St. Mary. The office component, as the first file that was adjourned, and some of the other office premises is assessed as 234 Donald. The assessment of 333 St. Mary for realty, though, encompasses the entire property, the entire retail mall, the entire office building, and this parkade. and the outside parking stalls. So the 234 Donald is synonymous with 333 St. Mary, but there is a distinction in the address used for business assessment purposes only.
Where are those outside parking stalls?
You know what, I don't think it's outside, I think actually there's underground, and if you turn to our page 2, they would be considered non-heated, so that, Mr. Chairman, may I approach?
Yep.
Ms. Santucci, you ready to join me here?
That's Jeff, you're the Jeff.
This is that, the parkade, and that's where the outside stalls are.
Oh, in the circle.
located. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that not the part that you pointed to?
Yes.
Isn't that just the ramp portion of the parkade?
But I thought there was stalls, outside stalls within that, although maybe I'm getting confused now.
Well, it's been a long time since I was in there, but I don't recall outside.
Well, we've got a mix of heated and unheated.
I would be, here's what I'm afraid of, is the outside is still the reference to the old parking lot across the street that was essentially part of 333 St. Mary.
Yeah.
That became the
Yeah.
two north buildings.
Yeah.
Or is the distinction just heated and non-heated,
But
all
non-heated-
contained within the
I
parkade?
don't think the non-heated would be in the same segment as the heated. That doesn't make sense to me.
Isn't it all indoors?
Yeah,
So
but-
it's all,
But is not the distinction, if it's an enclosed parkade, it's considered heated?
Yeah.
But if it's open air,
Yeah,
it's unheated?
yeah.
So
But now
could-
Mr. Bresky's got me wondering about that water process, but that was never on the same.
That was a
page.
separate roll
That was a
number.
separate
It was
roll.
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
In here, like there's a little loading zone area on this side.
is it
That's part of it.
with electricity and not with electricity?
That I don't know. That I don't know. There is a mix, I mean, the statement in the,
Yeah, you're right.
the statement in the realty brief certainly indicates very clearly it was a mix of heated and unheated. And the distinction between 298 and 167 will be based on that division. So somewhere we've got 167 stalls that I believe would be the heated or perhaps the 298 are heated, but that's the distinction in the two income streams, the heated versus the non-heated. But I can't identify where the non-heated would be.
The board is empowered to do field trips, I think we should go for a drive.
I was gonna go inspect this, I just didn't know how I was gonna inspect 400 and something stalls by myself, so I was putting it off until I could get someone to go with me, because it seems like there's different, like the mailer doesn't state exactly either, so I was just gonna go and try to figure it out.
Okay, so, but the big distinction here is the assessment department is saying 497 stalls, and you're saying 465 stalls.
We're saying 465 stalls, and at a minimum, certainly, we're saying that the income is shown on our page 20, that income for all, whatever the stall count is and whatever the revenue is, both monthly and hourly and what have you for the mall customers, that represents the entire parking income stream from all sources for the mall.
Right, and is there a distinction in the monthly amount for heated and unheated? Did you do the calculations on that?
No, I have not done the calculations. It will be included in the revenue, so it's gonna be included in these figures, but as far as what the hourly rate is or whatever, I did not do that calculation. I'm looking at the valuation of the entire income stream.
The assessment that was derived on the realty roll is how much?
The original assessment or the assessment ordered by the board?
Ordered by the board.
Page 7, please. So if you look at page 7, there's the 2020 assessment, realty assessment order, and that correlates to our page 21, which shows the total value of $79,801,000. The institutional exempt is a daycare, so that's why that's taken out. but the total value was the 79,801,000 that we had suggested.
Anything further, Mr. Preston?
Well, I'm just kind of in a quandary. I'll keep thinking.
Okay, Ms. Linkletter.
No, my questions was asked and answered, thank you.
Okay, here's my question. You're saying 465, and that's as reported by MPI or?
That would have been submitted by the owners, likely the property managers. I guess what I'm saying is, whatever the number is, if the board chooses to go 465 or 497, this on page 20 is the income stream the investor's valuing, and this is the rental value for all of the revenue sources relating to the park. So that's at its core, that's what I'm suggesting. I think obviously it's a good idea. Ms. Santucci, and we arranged to get the parking stall. We're gonna have to do that in connection with the municipal board realty assessment appeal anyway.
Right.
So that's gonna be done, but for the purpose of this business assessment, it doesn't change our figure by $1, whether it's 497 or 465.
Yeah, because you're not breaking it down.
Yeah, we're
Number
using-
of stalls at a certain amount.
Exactly, we're using
As-
gross income, yeah,
So you're not using a model per se, you're using.
site specific, exactly.
Okay. I just wondered about the stall count, whether it was consistent reporting. Sometimes it seems to be a moving target.
I don't know, because I've only got the snapshot from 7.
Yeah. Anything else come to mind, Mr. Bresky? Desire for summation, Ms. Assessor? Mr. Ryan?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 444 St. Mary Avenue, Unit 1700. Whenever you're ready, Mrs. Assessor.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5658, address unit 1700, 444 St. Mary Avenue, business assessment ID 30969. So for this business assessment, we have a total premise area of 126,088 square feet. This is for multiple units in this building. The first one we have is unit 800, then we have unit 1122, we have the entire 16th floor, we have 3 units on the 18th floor, the entire 3rd floor, we have 2 separate for the 4th floor, and then the entire 5th floor, the entire 6th floor, and the entire 17th floor. So the base annual rental value for all of them is $1,609,435. So I've determined the overall rate is $12.76 per square foot. That's without adding occupancy costs. And then the overall with occupancy costs is $15.22. On page 2, I have the income and expense information. I've added this up and we do come up with the same reported area of 126,088 square feet. And the actual overall effective for the reference date is $9.94. So it is lower than what we have for ours. And then the only other new information would be, I think it's post-referenced by a few months with their, because many of these leases were signed in 2014 and 13. I think they were re-signed in 18. And on page 3, I just have the rent comparables, the property type of the office fees. I have 13 comparables here. I tried to find ones with larger square footage. And the average is $14.34 and the median is $14.25. I've also just included the Cushman Wakefield Stevenson for the Class B's average net $15.31. And my recommendation today would be to maintain a 2020 annual rental value of $1,918,500. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reiner, questions for the assessor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the, Mr. Tucci, if I recall correctly, then the assessment, the business assessment, the net rent per square foot used for the business assessment is $12.76 a foot,
Yes.
right? And that's, again, that's being pulled from the realty assessment model,
Yes.
Frank, okay. So then going to your page 2, just to clarify again, as of the reference date, what was actually being earned on this, this space is $9.94 a square foot?
$9.94, yes.
Okay.
So it's
Then-
about a $3 difference.
Okay, so then, and turning briefly to page 3,
Yes.
now our premise area is, just over 126,000 feet. So on these are all Class B comps, I believe you mentioned.
Yes.
The only comparable that's anywhere near the size of the subject is number 13 at 120,000 feet at 1150, correct?
That's the only one I could find that was a larger.
Similar size.
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Boreski,
No questions.
Ms. Lindblom.
No questions, thank you.
I just have a minor question. Why is it designated as unit 1700?
Sometimes if they have their main office with the main entrance, they just give us a specific unit number and we put that one as the main.
Okay. And it's not the predominantly largest floor plate or?
No, usually they just give us a number they'd like it sent to, and that would be like either financing or their main office space.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reiner.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Could I, well, I presume we're all familiar with the building, but on page 2, very briefly, this is the significant premises inside 444 St. Mary, and the picture is shown on page 2. We're requesting a reduction this morning from $1,918,500 to $1,557,120. If we turn briefly then to page 5, so the suggestion we have, as we've again attached the materials relating to the 2020 realty assessment, we're suggesting a net market rent of $11.50 a square foot, which equals a total net rent of $1,238,653. Now, in this case, the Board of Revision order relating to the realty assessment wasn't explicit, and both the assessor and Aldous filed appeals of the realty decision to the municipal board, so that's the context in which we're operating. But I'd certainly suggest, Mr. Chairman, this morning that the net market rent of $11.50 a square foot continues to have very significant merit, and we are requesting that for the business assessment this morning. So at the bottom of page 5, we've got, now this is interesting though, we've got an area of 111,622, and I'm wondering where the 13,000 difference is coming in. What I'm going to suggest is this. For the moment, I'm going to give the board an alternate. Is there a calculator? No. My calculations are based on what was presented in connection with the realty assessment. But I'm going to, for the moment, if one assumes that the 126,088 feet is correct, and use, Ms. Santucci, what's the operating cost per square foot for air conditioning? Is it $245?
$2.45.
Yeah, $245, okay, that's what I thought. And you take 1150 plus 245, which gives you 1395. Try that again. So assuming that the 126, and I'm going to make this assumption for the moment, assuming the 126,088 square feet is correct, using 1150 a square foot, which is our suggestion for the net market rent, adding in the occupancy cost of $245 a square foot, the amended valuation would be $1,758,928, and I'm not sure what that would round to. Let's try this. $1,758,900. So the rate per square foot, I'm suggesting wouldn't change. I'm submitting that it should still remain at $11.50, but I'm going to assume that the 126,000 feet is correct, and I'm going to do a reconciliation when I get back to the office. If I have concerns, I'll contact Ms. Santucci directly. So if you could insert that number, $1,758,900, in lieu of the number that I have on my chart on the bottom of page 5, and treat that as my request. Going then to, I mentioned realty assessment in the submissions, the market rent that we had applied. If you turn to page 20 of our brief. So this is the rent roll for the building, and this is the information that I had used to derive my smaller area, all the Great West Life units shown here. So as you can see there, there's all $11.50 per square foot, with the exception of unit 300. Just noticed now it's at $12.50 a square foot, but that's a very small proportion of the unit. We may change it slightly. But I would suggest this morning that the $11.50 per square foot rate be applied to that larger area, and note, as I indicated in my questioning, the one comparable provided by Ms. Santucci that remotely resembles the size of the subject is also at $11.50 a square foot. So certainly based on the performance of the space and what it was generating as of the reference date, and in connection with the information that was provided, we submit that the $11.50 per square foot rate should be used, and that results in a suggested revised value of $1,758,900. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, questions for the applicants?
I think after reviewing, I just want to point out, it's unit 800 that's the discrepancy. I noticed on your page 20, there's
Yeah.
different tenants, and then on my income and expense questionnaire, unit 800 was occupied by Great West Life in July of 17, so I'm wondering if the chart maybe is just, so that's where I had come up with that.
That's the difference, and I'm gonna treat that as I say, I'm treating your area as the correct area, yeah. Thank you for that.
No problem, thank you. That was my only question. Just to confirm.
Thank you. Mr. Borowski?
So you're saying it should be $11.50 a square foot,
Yes.
but on your page 20, the actuals, the average is $11.97 at the bottom of the page?
$11.97 for the entire building, but $11.50 for all the GWL space.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so if you look at all the individual units, and this is where I say, with the exception of unit 300, I just noticed that now, that's at $12.50 a foot. But if you look at all the other units with Great West Life and Great West Assurance, they're all at $11.50. Now, Ms. Santucci mentioned unit 800, they were lower still at $9.10, but that's since been occupied by GWL, so I'm not gonna include that in my weighted, or in my calculations.
Sorry, I was misunderstanding what the list was. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Linklater?
I have no questions, thank you.
So your net market rents here, you don't give us a lease start date or anything? Are these current, as in signed close to the reference date?
So if you turn to page 18, towards the bottom, because the GWL is obviously a big tenant, the actual rent in place as of the reference date was lower. It stepped to $11.50 in September of 18, and that's what we've used. I believe so that would have been under the terms of, yeah, I'm not sure, that it would have been a minimum 2013 lease, no later than that was a step up. So it wouldn't have been entirely current, but certainly the market for this kind of space for the 120,000 feet. And that was other materials we've submitted. So for instance, on page 19, what we had provided to the board in connection with the realty appeal were some other Class B office rents, and as you can see, sort of our data is consistent with that provided by Ms. Santucci this morning. the two premises, or I guess the last four premises, let's say indices 13 through 15, represent premises that are getting closer, at least in size. In the case of 15, it's quite a bit larger. But they range from 1074 a foot up to 1150 a foot for premises in that range. So certainly we believe, based on that, the step rate and those market indicators at 1150 was appropriate.
Thank you. Desire for summation? Report. Thank you. Okay, that'll bring us to Unit 200, 333 St. Mary Avenue. When you're ready, Mrs. Assessor.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5678. Address is Unit 200, 333 St. Mary Avenue. Business assessment ID 51661. The business name is Shark Club, so this is a restaurant space, including, I guess it would be the casino area. So for the model rates, we have a premise area of 17,500, base annual rental value per square foot of $29.46. The subject property lease information, it's not owner occupied. When I reviewed the income expense questionnaire, we have a lease start in 2013. It's almost a 20-year lease. And they have a reported rent of $24 per square foot. On page 2 is my rental comparables. I have 7 rental comparables located in the downtown restaurants. The first comparable would be in the first 2 comparables would be in a newer office Class B building. Comparables 3 and 4 would be located in an older building. Comparable number 5, again, that's a 2005 building. And comparable 6 and 7, one was both in the 90s, one in the 80s. These range from $18.51 all the way up to $33, and the average is $26.45, and the median is $28. And let me just note that the 2, 6, and 7 are actually in the concourse, but they are restaurants. My recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $558,420. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, questions for the assessor?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Santucci, on page 2 then, the comparables 2, 6, and 7, you mentioned are restaurants, correct?
All of the comparables I have are restaurants.
Okay, they are, that was, that statement kind of threw, so they are all restaurants?
Yes.
Okay, okay. We can agree that none of these approach the size of the subject at 17,500 feet, correct?
No, I couldn't find anything that were over 10.
Were there any? No, you know what, that's not fair. Mr. Chairman, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Perez?
If you permit, just some sort of questions and suggestions, really just about how the information is laid out so that it sinks into a thick head more easily. Total annual rental value is the assessment that you are seeking. That's the business assessment.
Yes.
Frankly, I'd like to see it called that. Total area of premises, fine. Overall ARV, that is, begins with your base ARV per square foot. Your base ARV, 515,550, is what?
That's the base rent, annual rental value?
Annual.
Annual, that's just the rental.
That's the rent
Yes.
that comes from.
Yes.
So you have, I find it confusing to see ARV here and ARV up there when they're different numbers. So if there's different things, they should have different names.
For sure. I can talk to the-
So I would be inclined to say that you're seeking a business assessment of 558,420.
Yes.
The rent is this gross rent, whatever, you know, the proper term, as used in the realty
Yeah.
side of things, I would be inclined to have it called that. And then, I sort of, a little faster and a little more naturally follow what's being presented to me here. So you're saying that 2946 is the amount prior to the cost of occupancy.
Yes.
The cost of occupancy is pretty standard. I mean, it doesn't really change. You're applying the same amount all across the city, or within a certain area or type of structure. At what point does the cost of occupancy change?
The only ones I've ever noticed that have different occupancy costs is if we put an override on air conditioning, like we can put it to specific square footage, but overall, we have applied the same 60 cents for heat, $1.26 for electricity to all properties. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, substantial questions? No.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater.
My questions have been asked and answered, thank you.
Just clarification on page 2 here. 311 Portage and 314 Donald, AYB, that's, what does AYB stand for?
Actual year built, so those are the newest buildings at the corner of Donald and Portage. We just have two different addresses just
Okay.
because of the storefront.
And you don't feel that the economy of scale should come into play on this particular property?
For this one, it is a larger unit, so you would assume economies of scale, just defending what the model generated, so.
Because if I note your comparisons, the one that's, I guess there's two that's actually higher. The first one is only just under 7,000 square feet
Yeah.
in a substantially newer building.
And about
Yeah.
half the size.
And the other one is, once again, substantially lower, 2,500 square feet
Yes.
at $32. Is that one actually in the food court?
For which comparable?
201, comparison 6, 201 Portage.
Yes, so that would be the new updated one at 201, the large concourse food court. It's just one tenant though.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Page 2 briefly, then we are requesting, this is a Sharp Club, and we are happily agreed on the area of 17,500 feet, so to that extent we can agree. We're requesting a reduction this morning in the annual rental value to $462,840. If I could skip ahead then and get to the heart of the matter on page 4. The assessor's presentation and our presentation is consistent as well as far as in terms of the lease. It is a June 2013 lease of $24 a square foot. That was being achieved as of the reference date, and I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that if you were going further to my question, and my question certainly was relating to the area, I would suggest there's economies of scale, and certainly that the $24 rate reflects those economies, and again, also reflects both what we asked for in connection with the realty assessment appeal and what we are requesting this morning based on what was actually achieved and the rental rate being achieved for that space. Again, to put this in context, this property, if you recall, is in appeal at the municipal board. The assessors filed an appeal of the realty assessment at the municipal board level. Notwithstanding that, and we certainly believe the $24 rate is appropriate and are requesting that rate. If I could then ask the board and Ms. Santucci to turn to our page 18, please. So the valuation of this of Triple Blue St. Mary, which is the entire mall, it's broken down into the office component, primarily MPI and a couple other tenants, and then the retail component, which is where this is located, and the parkade that we had, or the parking revenue that we discussed earlier. If you go on our page 18 to unit number 200, so it's about a quarter of the way down, that's the Shark Club, 17,500 at $24 a foot, and that's based on the June 13 lease. The other information I'd like to point out to the board, this mall certainly, the rental revenue being achieved is certainly not the same as some of the other better quality retail mall locations. And if you take this in context, we've got our unit 200 at 17,000 feet. If you skip down about 7 items to unit 59, the Pharma Plus, that's another large, obviously retail unit, 7,848 feet at 2610. So it's slightly higher, but it's also again less than half the size. And if you skip 2 down from there, there's the Boston Pizza that's in the mall. Again, a larger restaurant at 6,647 at 1885. So the revenue being generated by this unit at $24 a foot certainly seems to be very consistent with, it's a newer unit in the mall, and the $24 rate, I believe, represents a very fair and equitable rent, and certainly relative to some of the other indicators in the mall, the owners are happy to get that rent. So I am suggesting then, if you turn back to our page 5, we're suggesting, as you can see in the chart there, 17,500 feet with a net rent of $24 a square foot for a total net rent of $420,000. Then adding in the occupancy costs, we come in at a total area of $462,840. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, questions for the applicant?
No questions.
Mr. Boreski?
No questions.
Ms. Linklater?
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you. Going to operate on the assumption that there's no need for summation unless you feel otherwise. Please let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we can move on to 191 Broadway.
This is file number 19-5661, address is 191 Broadway. Business assessment ID 18023. So we have a total area of all premises at 83,421 square feet. This is owner occupied. We have a base rental value per square foot of $11.79. And then with occupancy added in, we have the overall rate per square foot of $14.24. If you turn to page 2, I have 13 comparables here. They were used as well on previous properties. The average is $14.34. Median is $14.25. So the closest comparable in size would be comparable 13. And then I have a few comparable 4 and 6 that are just around 10,000 and over. And my recommendation today would be to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $1,187,940. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Santucci, again, to be clear, this is what's called on the first page base ARV, which is the net rent that is applied. That's net rent that's pulled from the realty assessment model that has then been applied here, correct?
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. That's my question.
Thank you. Mr. Boreski?
That was the reference to the 1179? That was just made? Yeah. That's my only question, thanks.
Ms. Linklater?
So you've stated, Ms. Santucci, that page 2, you're at comparables, number 13, you're putting the most weight on that one, and that's due to size?
Yes, that's the only one even relatively close to the 83,000.
Okay, even though that is renting at $11.50 a square foot?
Yes, so we're about 29 cents higher on the model, so fairly close.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
This is an entire building,
Yes.
and none of your comparisons are entire buildings,
No, I think 300 Carlton isn't the entire building, so,
most entire buildings, I'm assuming, are owner occupied,
yeah.
so you wouldn't be able to pull rents.
Mhm.
But 300 Carlton is not the entire building as far as your,
From my understanding, but I could be wrong.
okay. And that's actually your built of 1911, but has there not been substantial renovations and additions to that building?
Yes, for this year, we were including just the actual year built in the comparable list. We didn't have effective year built.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer?
Mr. Chairman, on that very point that you just made, I'm gonna jump in and then I'm gonna step back for a second, but could I ask the board members and Ms. Santucci please to turn to our page 17. On page 17, this is the chart, the Class B rent comparisons that we applied with the realty assessment. The second last comp index number 14, that is the very building that you just referred to, and it's also in Ms. Santucci's evidence. And yes, there has been a huge amount of work done, and the effective age on that building is 1990. So to answer your question, there has been substantial work. The effective age is 1990 for that property on Carlton. So make further reference to these comps in a bit, but I wanted to draw that out immediately given the question that you just asked.
Well, seeing as how you brought that up, I see there's a discrepancy in what the net rent per square foot is. Yours versus the assessors.
Okay, let's take a look at that. 1019 versus 1150. I'm guessing that the 1150 is a stepped rate, but I don't know that for sure. So I am going to, our 1019, I believe, would have been based on the specific records that we had from the owner at the time. But I've also certainly seen examples where the stepped rate, if it's either pending or coming up just close to the reference date, that it isn't reflected in this chart. So I'm gonna go make the assumption that the 1150 is correct. But again, for that, the 1150 was rent generated after a very, very large sum of money was invested, resulting in a significant variant age. So our suggestion this morning for this premise, this is the Lower East Side premise at 191 Broadway, is entirely owner-occupied. Page 2 of our submission, we're asking for a slight reduction from 1,187,940 to 1,122,122. That's the building there on page 2. And if we go then to our page 4, towards the bottom of page 4, the property was again appealed to the Board of Revision, and we had suggested at the Board of Revision realty hearing for 2020 a net rent of $11 a square foot, which the board appears to have accepted. And we are requesting that same $11 rate this morning. So then turning briefly to page 5, applying the $11 rate as opposed to the $11.79 that the model had kicked out for realty assessment purposes. Applying that $11 rate to $83,421 and then adding the occupancy cost results in the requested value of $1,122,000. So then if I might direct the board back to our page 17. And again, certainly I'm going to suggest that economies of scale would apply where we've got, and Ms. Santucci has been very forthright in her comments and appreciate that. And I'd suggest with in this case, we've got 83,500 roughly square feet, 1,000 square feet of office space. Our indices 11 through 15 on the chart on page 17 would represent the indices for a much larger space. Number 15 is quite a bit larger still, so I'm not placing a lot of weight on that. But certainly indices 11 through 14 of between 1019 a square foot or 1150, and assuming that that's a stepped rate. So let's call it 1040 to 1150 a square foot for premises of similar size. And certainly we believe the $11 rate that we suggested at the realty and requesting this morning as well within that range, and ask the board to order accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, questions for the applicant?
Just so we're following what was done for the above grade space, the $11
Yes,
applied to this,
yes,
okay?
and- yeah, yeah,
Perfect.
indeed.
That's my only question.
Thank you. Mr. Boraski?
No questions.
Ms. Lindblad?
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions, thank you. We can move on to 375 Main.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is file number 19-5216. Address is 375 Main Street. Business assessment ID is 21886. So we did have a total premise area of 24,632 square feet. Upon review of the mailer, they no longer occupy any space on the 7th, which accounted for 8,466 square feet. So, I reviewed the mailer and determined the 5th floor net lease, which started in August 2009, was about a 10-year lease at a reported area of 16,166 square feet and a reported rental per square feet of $18.50. So upon finding out that there was nothing on the 7th, I inspected the property on February 25th and determined that they are only on the 5th floor for that reported area. And I have revised at the bottom of my page for this property. So the premise area would now be 16,166 square feet with a base rental value per square foot of $18.64. So this is just for the model. And then with occupancy costs added, the overall rental rate per square foot of $21.09 and a total annual rental value of $340,920. And then on page 2, I just have comparables to justify the $18.64. So I have 12 comparables here from Office A buildings. They range in size. I tried to pick comparables that were larger. The average is $18.42 and the median is $18. And then at the bottom there we have the Cushman Wakefield Stevenson, which just shows an average net rental rate for Class A's of $19.93. So my recommendation today is to reduce the 2020 business assessment value from the $3,700 to $340,920, just based on my inspection and lower square footage. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Armour, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions, and I'm in agreement with the reduced value.
Mr. Boraski, any questions?
Nope.
Ms. Lindblad?
Questions, thank you.
I have none. My assumption is there's no further presentation, Mr. Ryan?
Correct.
Okay, I think at this point, we'll take a short break. 10 minutes if we could, please.
Okay.
It's 10 after now. Okay, I will call the hearing back to order. And we'll deal with 225 Broadway next.
Okay, so this is file number 19-5228, address 225 Broadway, business assessment ID 34017. So we have a total area for 22,963 square feet, which we have into 3 premises. The total rental value was $323,430. So the overall is $14.08. And then the overall with the occupancy cost added was $16.54. So this is owner occupied, and my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 business assessment value of the $379,740. I think this was one of the 54 ones.
have any questions?
I have no questions, and I'm, for the information of the board, I'm simply seeking confirmation of the present assessment.
Mr. Bresky, questions for the applicant, or sorry, for the assessor?
No.
Ms. Lindquist?
No questions, thank you.
Did you mention what the overall base,
So it'd be $14.08.
14
$14.08.
and 8 cents?
Yes.
Thank you.
And even though it says Cape May Credit Union, there is no banking or ATM services at this property. It's just offices.
There's nothing on the main floor of this building? There's no,
When I looked on the website, it said there was no ATM or banking services available, so I went off of that.
so it's just a head office?
Yes, I think they have, I guess,
And I can confirm that it is an office, it's the head office, yeah.
Thank you. You're in agreement with the valuation, and you're not presenting anything further?
Correct.
Thank you. $375 Main, we'll deal with next.
thank you. This is file number 19-5215, address 375 Main Street, business assessment ID 21834. This is the CIBC. It is the concourse level, which is what, I'll break it down. It's 11,440 square feet for the concourse, and the main level is 5,403 square feet. So total premise area, 16,843 square feet. We have the base rental value per square foot of $19.65. With occupancy costs added, we have the overall at $22.10. So when we reviewed the mailer, we have two premises. We have about 10-year term leases. So the concourse level, they have an $18.50 reported rent per square foot, and the same applied to the main floor.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mind a short halt here, because I don't have the same material. My next one here is 375 Main Street,
Did I start with the wrong one?
roll number BA 24356.
20, sorry?
That's the next one on the document, is it not?
That's,
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
that's the
skip
next one,
Mhm.
Cambrian.
Sorry, I didn't
Maybe the
hear
previous one.
BA 21834.
Yes.
We're looking at?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, and then 24356.
Yes.
All right. There we are. Carry on.
So on page 2,
Perhaps, you
should I go over?
could, yes,
briefly
if you
again?
would please,
For
now that
sure.
we're all on the same page.
So we have the total premise area of 16,843 square feet. It is broken down into the concourse level of 11,440 square feet and the main floor at 5,403 square feet. The reported rental rates per square foot are both at $18.50, and the model rate, base rent per square foot is $19.65. Including occupancy costs, it goes up to $22.10. If we turn to page 2, I have the rental comparables. So I've included here comparables 1 to 4 are, would be at a concourse level. Comparable 4 is a bank, and comparable 1 is also a bank. Comparable 2 is actually a retail unit, just a larger square foot. And then comparables 5 to 9 are above grade for office at Class A. So the average of my 9 comparables is $20.22, and the median is $19. And I've just included again the Class A $19.93 average net rental from the Cushman, Wakefield and Stevenson. And my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $372,240. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, question for the assessor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Santucci, so, again, on page 1, initially, what's called the base ARV, that's the net rent.
Yes.
That's pulled from the realty assessment model for 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then if we turn briefly to page 2, and I want to make sure, I suspected this was the case, but to make sure that comps 1 through 4 are banks.
Comps 1 through 4 are located in a concourse level, but only comparable 1 and 4 are banks.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay,
Yes.
so 1 and 4 are banks in concourse level, and then comps 5 through 9 are main floor.
They're above. I couldn't find any main floor comparables
Okay.
within a lease start time that was appropriate.
Okay. I'm just gonna make a note of that there. Okay, and in terms of the subject then, and our records are consistent, what we've got in this case is a concourse level bank of 11,440 square feet, correct?
Yes.
And so the closest comparable then for that kind of space would be your index number 4, would that be fair?
Yes.
6831 square feet
Mhm.
concourse at $19, okay.
Yes.
And as far as the comps 5 through 9, which relates more to the office,
Yes.
then the 2 leases in 2017, that is, are between 17 and $18 as well, correct?
Yes.
That's indices, yeah, indices 5 and 6, okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Breskin.
I'm just looking at the PC column.
Mhm.
So CSC is for concourse, and the rest of them are,
I think it was actually for
OFA.
shopping center, and we have that, like the property type class as the shopping center for most of the concourses. So that's why I put that in there, but it is concourse level and we have it as, that property type.
And that would be normal then if a shopping center bank in a shopping center would get the CSC code?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, that's my only question.
Thank you. Ms. Lepler.
No questions, thank you.
So the 11,000 and change is in concourse, the remainder, is that on the main floor?
Just the main floor where the escalators, I guess would be.
But Is it also banking or is it offices?
From my understanding, it's office space.
Okay, and yet there's no distinction between the two.
No,
I
they
see
were.
the lease is the same amount, so
Mhm.
you've applied the same base ARV.
Yes, the same base model.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Reimer, hear from you, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So there's a few things we can agree on, just with reference to the departments of Ms. Santucci's page 1. We can agree on the leasable area. We can agree on the reported area of 11,440 being the retail bank space in the concourse. We can agree on the 5,403 feet being the main floor, and that is office. That's just as Ms. Santucci had described. It's offices for the CIBC on the main floor right by the escalators. So the retail location is the concourse level, offices main floor. And we can agree on the 1850 per square foot net rent being achieved as of the reference date. That, though, there's one wrinkle in that. The lease start date, we agree, is August of 2009, but the 1850 is a stepped rate. That was in effect as of the reference date, so not the original date, but it was a stepped rate as of 2014. So then looking ahead to, or skipping over to our brief on page 5. We are suggesting in this case a net rent, as we had done with respect to the 2020 realty appeal, a net rent of $18.50 a square foot. We suggested that at the realty assessment appeal hearing, the board granted it. The assessor, though, again, to set the context, the assessors appealed that order to the municipal board. We do continue to believe the 1850 stepped rate is appropriate and is fair and equitable, and we're asking that this board order the reduction in the ARV using the 1850 rate, which results in a total ARV, as you see in the chart at the bottom of page 5, of $352,860. So I'll briefly go just to confirm the information. If we could please go to page 15 of our materials. So page 15, at the very first entry, Unit 100, that's the main floor office. Unit 100 with a lease start date of August of '09, step date of August 1/14 at 1850. So that is what we suggested with the realty hearing and are suggesting here this morning. Then if you turn to our page 16, the second component of the plan, this is the CSC, which stands for Community Shopping Center. This is the concourse level. And the CIBC is shown at roughly the middle of that chart at Unit 10, 11,440 feet. Again, same parameters, the start date of August of '09 with a step date of August 1/2014 at 1850 square foot. So those are the parameters that's the information that we applied, and that's the information that we're requesting be applied in this case using the 1850 rate, and the reduction from 372,240 to 352,860. I do note that with respect to the concourse level in the retail banking, it is also consistent with the department's index number 4, and certainly the 1850 rate we'd suggest is very consistent with the office, Class A office rents that were being generated at close to the reference date. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, questions for the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Bresky?
No questions.
Ms. Linkley?
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions, thank you. We have another one titled 375 Main Street. Just wondering, Mrs. Seltzer, is that something that's common practice, just using the address rather than a unit number when there's multiple tenants?
Normally, we have the option to put a unit number in. I'd always ask the tenant what number they wanted. Some of these, I'm not some of them I thought had unit numbers, and they're just maybe like some of the ones in the docket, so this just shows that we haven't put a unit number in based in our system.
Yeah, no, I understand that you identify it by the bid or the PID, but
Oh, okay, yeah, so we have a property description, and that's what I'm seeing in my system, so it prints on the tax bills, it just doesn't print on our,
I see, so
System.
they do actually
yes,
denote.
we should be putting it in technically both spaces, like a unit, I think this one, they have it as like,
It would just clarify things a
yes,
little
for
bit.
sure.
Okay, sorry to digress there, but when you're ready,
Thank
we'll
you.
hear from you for 375 Main, premise ID 16069.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5217. We have addresses 375 Main Street. This is for the 10th floor. Business assessment ID 24356. So we have the owners as the Merrill Lynch Canada Incorporated, but it is CIBC, they had bought them out. We have the taxable party still like that, but it is the tenant of CIBC. We have total premise area, 16,166 square feet, which accounts for the whole 10th floor. We have the base rental value, or the base rent per square foot of $17.05. And with the occupancy costs, we have the overall rental rate per square foot of $19.50. We have that it's not owner occupied and that there's a lease in place starting from 2009 for about 10 years for $18.50. My recommendation today would be to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $315,240. Thank you, that's my presentation.
I thank you. Mr. Mr. Reimer, questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman, and simply seeking confirmation of the present assessment.
Thank you. Mr. Boraski, questions?
None.
Ms. Linklater?
No questions, thank you.
Just clarification if I could, Ms. Santucci. You said that this is actually CIBC,
Yes,
but the taxable party is still Merrill Lynch?
yes, there's been no request to change it, and they pay the taxables. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add a business name in our system, just so next time it generates, that would come above it, just so, for more clarification.
But this would still be the taxable party, would be Merrill Lynch Canada Inc.?
Technically, if they send us something, we'll change it, but we don't change it without a request, so. We just know that, from the notes that they were bought by them.
Thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Reimer?
No, thank you.
Thank you. That'll bring us to Unit 2900, 201 Portage.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5497, address unit 2900 Portage Avenue, business assessment ID 28711. We have a total premise area, 14,309 square feet. We have the base rental rate per square foot of $19.35. When we add occupancy costs, the overall rental rate per square foot is $21.80. This is not owner occupied, this unit. From the income and expense questionnaire, we have a lease in place that started in 2012, about 10 years, and the reported rent per square foot is $17. If you turn to page 2, I have rental comparables. I chose 12 comparables from office class A buildings. These are all above the main floor. The average is $18.42 and the median is $18. Our rate falls within the range of, I think my lowest one is $14.12 and it goes up to $22. So my recommendation today would be to maintain the 2020 annual, the assessed value of $311,942. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, questions for the assessor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Santucci, page 1, the base ARV or net rent, that's again derived from the UAT assessment model, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Turning to page 2 briefly. So our premise is 14,309 feet that you've got. So the closest in size would be, on your page 2, would be indices 1, 2, and 3, I believe, correct? 14,000, 14 and a half, and 15.7?
This comparables 1, 2, and 4, I think would be the.
Or I'm sorry, 1, 2, and
Yeah.
4, indeed. And they range between 17 and 18, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Bresky?
None.
Ms. Linklater?
Asked and answered, thank you.
So just to clarify, the base rate ARV at 1935, that's selected based on
Just the
your
model. Jen.
comparables? So you're saying that the $17 reported rent or actual in place is a contract rent but not reflective of market?
We don't use the actual, so the model generated 1935, and that's what I'm defending here today.
And does that have anything to do with the lease start date of 2012?
Possibly, I didn't look, I couldn't remember if there was a step up at all, but there's a possibility that that's 6 years prior to the reference date, so. But
Right.
my comparables, I tried to find ones that were all newer than 16, and it fell within the range, so I thought that would be fair.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, you ready?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If I could then ask the board, well, page 2, briefly, of course, this is 201 Portage Avenue, one of the Class A office buildings in Winnipeg, and this is the Wyndham Express World Corp offices at units 2900 and 2901, and the request this morning is to reduce the ARV from 311,940 to 281,100. Skipping through to the heart of the matter then on page 5. Our area is slightly larger, and we're gonna, I'm gonna proceed with that area. That's what we show in our rental. So we're using an area of 14,454 feet. It's, that's, what is it, 145 square feet larger than what the department's got. So we'll continue to apply that area. We are, however, applying the rate of $17 a square foot. A couple of comments on that. The starting point for the $17 was, this is the rent that was being generated for the space based upon the lease for the space that was negotiated, and it was, as Ms. Santucci indicated, it was April 1st, 2012. So we requested that rate in connection with the realty hearing. The board agreed with our request. But going further then, if one turns then to page 18 initially. So 18, it is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th from the bottom. That's the premise we're talking about, Rundle World Corp at $17. If you look though, and again, this property has a couple of different income streams. This is the office income stream. So if you look at the very bottom, the overall average for the office is $16.82 a square foot based on the calculations we had performed. But more importantly then, I did want to draw the board's attention to a couple of things. If we turn back to our page 16. So these are Class A office rents negotiated, as you can see on the chart towards the top of the page, anywhere between November of 16 and January of 18. The units, though, that are most comparable in size are indices 3, 7, and 10 at areas of 14,514, 8,000 square feet and 15,741 square feet respectively. And as you can see from those spaces, you've got 17 and a quarter for index number 3, $18 for index number 7, and $17 for index number 10. So these are very telling indicators and reinforce the suggestion that I'm making this morning that $17 is appropriate. I also note, if one turns briefly to Ms. Santucci's brief on page 2, if you look at the comparables, indices numbers 3 to 6, those are all in 201 Portage. So those are in the building that we're talking about. And if you look at those comparables, the only one that's, again, nearest in size is 15,741 at $17. But if you look at the other ones, the first one is unit 1120, 6,095 feet at $16.50. Then you've got one that's higher at $21 for 7,998 square feet. That's comparable number 5, but then comparable number 6. 3,486 square feet, much smaller unit at 1901. So we'd certainly suggest that the $17 rate is borne out by that information given the size of the premise. So adding it all up, Mr. Chairman, I suggest the $17 rate is a fair and equitable rate to apply in this case. Applying it both to a slightly larger area that we're suggesting of 14,454 square feet results, as I indicate on page 5, results in a requested annual rental value of $281,100, including the occupancy costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, questions for the applicant?
No questions, thank
Mr. Brisk?
No question.
Ms. Linkletter?
No questions.
I know you won't be able to answer this, Mr. Reimer, but the 14,454 that you would report an
Yes.
area,
Yes.
which is in disagreement with what the assessor uses of 14,309,
Yes.
but also the subject lease is 14,512, as per her reported.
Oh, that's different again. That
Different
I cannot,
again.
Yeah, that I cannot explain. That's a very good question. We've got it, and I'm relying on our page 18, I referred to, we've got it as 14,454 feet.
is this a client of yours?
Yeah, yeah.
So the rent roll
The rent roll is
that
what
you're
we-
using,
Yeah, yeah, the information on our page 18 would have been lifted directly off the rent roll, which would have indicated the 14,454. So that's a good eye, that discrepancy I had not noticed, the 14,512. I'd be inclined, Mr. Chairman, to stick with my 14,454, which would have been pulled directly off the rent roll.
okay, thank you. We'll bring us to the final property on our docket, which is Unit T 101, 360 Portage. And you're reading this, Susan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is file number 19-5242. Address is Unit T 101, 360 Portage Avenue, Business Assessment ID 25179. This is a bank unit in the main floor of what would be the Hydro Building. We have a total area of 8,592 square feet. The rental rate per square foot is $32.68, which is model rate. And then the overall rate with occupancy is $35.13. The subject property lease information, it's not owner occupied. The lease started in 2009, that's a 10-year lease, and we have a reported rent rate of $31.08. If you turn to page 2, I've just submitted the comparables that were used for the realty. Just shows an average of $26.88, a median of $27, and a weighted average of $25.90. So these would be standalone banks and strip mall banks that were used. And my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $301,860. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ndicki, I believe you alluded to it, but on your page 1, the base ARV, which is the net rent, that's again pulled from the 2020 realty assessment model, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Turning briefly to page 2. So just running through these comparables very briefly, the only one, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only one that I saw that was in the downtown area was comparable number 5, 230 Portage, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's an older building, 1985, but that's similar in size, at least at $15, correct?
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Boraski?
No questions.
Ms. Linkletter?
No questions, thank you.
Just to follow up from what Mr. Reimer was questioning, index number 5, that's the only downtown location, but is it not, is that not a standalone as well?
Yes.
So none of these are contained within an office building or?
No, for the realty, I just followed the comparables used. I probably should have added in though if the office class A rents as well, but I just had followed kind of what was done for realties.
Okay, because we have dealt with a couple of banks in Class A office buildings today
Yes.
already. Thank you, and once again, the 3268 is the realty model generated
Yes.
number, and you think it's more appropriate than the actual reported rent of 3108?
Well, I agree that the rate that's reported is fair, just that our model is based on not the actual, so it's within a range of being close to it. If our model was like higher or lower than by about, I can't remember what our percentages we look at, but it's not like $5 higher or lower, so I thought the rate applied was fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Reimer, will you hear from you, please?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is the RDC that's just to the It's all part of the same assessment that's right by the new Manitoba Hydro buildings, the RDC right at the corner of, I think, Edmonton and Portage. I have my street numbers right, or street names right. To get to the crux of it, a couple of things, we appealed the realty assessment to the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision, to put this in context, confirmed the value, so the board and the realty assessment confirmed the 3268 model-driven net rent, and we, however, have appealed that up to the municipal board, but be that as it may, for our purposes this morning, what we're asking this board to consider at page 5. The premise area happily is the same in this case, 8,592 square feet, and we are in fact applying the net rent that was in place of $31.08. That doesn't result in a significant reduction, but still results in a reduction, a suggested reduction from $301,860 down to $288,060, and that is our request this morning in the context of the previous appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Mr. Bresky?
No question.
Ms. Lindblad?
No questions.
And I have no questions. So thank you. That will conclude the properties that we dealt with. Thank you both for your presentations today, and the orders will be forthcoming. With that, I will call the hearing to a close.